Back on MorningLine, thanks for joining us live this morning from down here at the News Channel 5 studios. Talking this morning issues of race in this country and where we stand as we make our way toward the political arena in terms of the election. Just coming up here in November, not too distant from now, and the role it'll play. Jonathan Metzl's with us. He's a professor at Vanderbilt, professor of sociology, psychology, among other things, author, and has talked a lot about these issues of race and the like. And we've got some more callers for you, Professor, that waited through the break. What do you say we take them?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's go to Leon next. Good morning, Leon. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm here. How y'all doing this morning, man?
Good, good. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was calling about the racial equality. I was thinking that this country was never built for racial equality, just from the slave perspective, and just things that black people have been through from the 1619 to right to this day. And it's kind of like that the dominant society is in denial when we speak on the racial injustices that we go through. And it's hard to believe that this is the Bible Belt and nobody has any compassion for any black lives, not only black lives, poor white people catch hell in Nashville. Anybody that don't have a bunch of money here is always having trouble with the dominant society. And when we got a president like Donald Trump, he strokes fears in people. He has people, he keeps talking about he want to make America great again. Well, when was it great for black people? I'm just wondering. It's like this is the tale of two different worlds. America is a poor people's America and it's a rich people's America. Until we can to people that on the sidelines can comment on it and call it for what it is, it's gonna be racial equality to the inner tent because we got too much denial going on.
All right, Professor, what do you think?
Well, powerful. I could not agree more. I mean, I think there's so much frustration right now because people aren't listening to this very, very basic point about human dignity and about equality and about it. I mean, just look at this pandemic. It really is the rich get richer and the poor get nothing. And I think that that's been borne out again and again. And I think that the caller is actually right. And I also think the point of history is very important. I didn't make it before, but the history of race and racism in America is so baked into a lot of these issues. We were talking about guns, for example, before, and after the conversation today, I'm happy to post some of the stuff I've written there. But really, the history of just who could own a gun in this country, who could carry a gun in public, who had the right to carry a gun, is tied all the way back to colonial America and slavery and all these things as a right that's bestowed on white Americans and not on other people. And so there's a racial history in this country that really is being manipulated by a lot of this message to make people again feel like they don't have anything in common with each other or they don't have common interests. I also think the caller makes a great point that actually by socioeconomic class, people do have common interests. Poor white people are also getting screwed by this same system. And in Dying of Whiteness, I have a lot of data that show that poor white people's life expectancy is going down for the exact reasons we're talking about today. So why don't people join together along economic interests? And part of that again goes back to the ways that race is used to divide people so that they don't join together to advocate. I mean, if you think about it right now, low-income Trump supporters and low-income Black Lives Matter supporters would both benefit economically from the same economic structures, the same economic improvements, better healthcare, better jobs, better education. So why don't they join forces? Well, look, the entire system is telling those two groups of people that they shouldn't join forces at using race. And so in a way, it works. Who does that work for? Well, it doesn't work for really either group. It works for the people who are powerful already.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes those groups end up voting in the way that's against their very own interests. I wanted to ask you just about the ability to step aside and try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Time and again, when we've reported on these cases where an African American is shot and killed in some involvement action with law enforcement, oftentimes, okay, you're going to have obviously the outrage over the shooting and the death in that situation, but you're going to hear others, and it's predominantly among whites, saying, look, if you just do what you're told, you're not going to get shot. And in my perception, at least in covering this, would be, you know, put yourself in the shoes, if you were white, of an African American. And if I get pulled over, okay, the way I look, I'm not fearful, and I understand, I view this officer as someone who may help me. But there are blacks I try to set aside and say, look, that's me, but maybe if I were black and I get pulled over, I don't view a police officer the same way I do as a Caucasian. And maybe I should consider for a moment, instead of saying just obey what the police officer says, that maybe these African Americans, when they're stopped, are afraid and fearful of trusting them, that something bad's going to happen, which is why they hesitate. To me, that seems pretty easy to stop and try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And yet time and again, I just keep hearing the phrase, well, if they would just comply with what police officer said, they wouldn't get shot.
There are two parts of that I think that are so important. One, of course, is you're right. There's a lot of research now that I think reinforces the idea of this really being a vicious cycle. That just the idea of following the rules will, if you feel like you're in danger, you're not going to do that, and then the police see that as a threat or running away, and then whatever. And so this system just reinforces itself. But I think the other important point is that if this was just one case, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And really, it's not just about these very graphic, killings that we see. It's really, I think, what people are telling us is there's a much bigger systemic issue about just how people feel. They basically feel like the state is set up to police them, to that they're seen as the enemy, and it ties into very deep emotions that aren't just about these horrible cases. It's really about the relationship to the system. And so when it's just easier to have a debate about this one case, which are horrific cases, but the bigger issue is how can we have a system where more people feel safe, and this is less of an issue. And so I just think, this is how scholars think about what's called structural racism, that the thing you see is just the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger systemic problem. And I think really that's how these cases really need to be understood.
Yeah, boy, I'll tell you, listen, let's take a break. When we come back, our final segment with our guest, Jonathan Metzl. We'll also take a few more phone calls, Professor, so stay with us. We'll be back after this break.
Sounds good.